Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. I'm back. Good to be back. So want to go ahead and do our usual Friday recruiting college basketball roundup. Now, it's not Friday. I know we're a day early. I can tell. I look at a calendar, okay? But at the same time, every Friday over the fall, we've done kind of these wide-ranging college hoops recruiting update segments. And, usually going into a weekend, it's okay. These kids are visiting this school. That kid's visiting that school. What does it mean for Indiana and Kansas and Arkansas and Kentucky and UConn and whoever? Well, over the last couple of weeks, a lot of guys have come off the board. You don't need me to tell you. The Boozer twins at Duke. UConn's picked up 4 different kids in probably the last 6 weeks or so. And so what I want to do today is, rather than focusing on a bunch of different stuff, because frankly, there's just not a lot of visits still going on here in late October. Instead, what I want to do is focus on one specific school, one specific team, and that is the University of Kentucky. Because Mark Pope, quietly, the man who I was told would not be able to recruit at the highest level. Now, I never bought that. If you go back and listen, I was pseudo-critical of the hire, didn't love how the process that Mitch Barnhart took to get there. But I think Mark Pope's a great coach. And I always thought he'd be a good recruiter because, as Kentucky fans have seen, he is a super dynamic personality when you get him in front of a camera, and certainly when you get him in front of kids and their parents, okay? And so I bring it up because what I want to talk about today is Mark Pope going to be able to close out his dream recruiting class for 2025? Bottom line, 2 kids are committed at this point. There is one that we feel pretty darn good is going to be a Wildcat by the end of the weekend. And oh, by the way, of course, there is one total wild card that is worth discussing. So let's go ahead and dive in. By the way, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, if you are not following our Torres on UK Twitter account, Torres on Kentucky, you're missing out. Late breaking news, updates, things of that nature. Make sure that you're following Torres on UK. But let's go ahead and dive into this 25 recruiting class. And listen, we're not going to spend too much time on the past, but it is worth noting. I don't think we can just skip over the fact that Mark Pope closed those 2 kids in August, okay, and in September. Nothing's official. They'll sign on the dotted line in the next couple of weeks. But we got to give credit to Mark Pope for Malachi Moreno, 7-foot center from Kentucky, and Jasper Johnson, 6'4" guard, originally from Kentucky, played at Link Academy last year, now headed to OTE. Bottom line, we talked about it at the time. We don't need to go through too much of who they are, but Moreno is a skilled 7-footer. I think he's probably even going to be better as time goes on, but he is skilled, soft touch, athletic, you name it. And then Jasper Johnson, to me, was the big one. And I know we talked about it at the time, but this was a kid that was really far down the road in his recruitment when Mark Pope got the job. For most of the summer, it felt like kind of an Alabama, North Carolina recruitment. Kentucky's on the outside looking in. And then, boom, Mark Pope gets on the job. Credit to a bunch of people, including Vince Marrow, the football coach, who obviously was friendly with the family. On and on. We've talked about those 2, but those are 2 great cornerstones to this recruiting class. What I want to do now is look ahead, specifically to this weekend, and then to the bigger picture of what could be coming in the next couple weeks. First off, this weekend, Kentucky fans, you don't need me to tell you, it is a big one because Acaden Lewis is coming off the board. Acaden Lewis, 6'3" guard from the DC area. I really like his game. He's a lead guard, great with the ball in his hands, can finish at the rim, can score, can get others involved. And transparently, he's going to be a Kentucky Wildcat, right? And it's funny because I go through this recruitment. If you remember about 3 weeks ago, UConn got a kid committed by the name of Darius Adams. Should mention, by the way, Acaden Lewis commits on Saturday, and his final 3 is Duke, UConn, and Kentucky. But as I was going to say a second ago, Duke and UConn, I hate to do it, Kentucky fans, but we'll use an old John Calipari term. They feel like hats on the table, okay? With UConn, it was funny. The point I was going to get to just a second ago, they got a commitment from a combo guard named Darius Adams about 2.5 weeks ago, was texting with our Torres on UK guy. Hey, I think this is good news for Kentucky. I don't think UConn's going to take another point guard, lead guard in this class. So we put it out on the UK page, and it was UConn fans that were like, Torres, you're just trying to hype up Kentucky fans. You don't know what you're talking about. We're still recruiting Acaden. It's like, no, we're not, but it's okay. whatever, who cares? But UConn's got their guys. They're set. 4 guys in that recruiting class, including Darius Adams, including Braylon Mullins. I don't think they're taking anybody else in 2025. And Duke, listen, Duke got their guy too. Caden and Cameron Boozer are headed to Duke, the Boozer twins. Cam Boozer, as we know, athletic, 6'8", 6'9" forward, and his twin brother Caden is a point guard. And so we don't need to oversell this and over talk about it, but Duke is obviously not taking another point guard in the class of 2025. They're not going to recruit over a legacy recruit. Like, don't want to piss off dad, don't want to piss off those old Coach K regime guys. And oh, by the way, you don't want to piss off the top recruit in your class, arguably the top recruit in the country outside of AJ DeBonsa. So yeah, Acaden Lewis will, when it's official, we'll probably have some reaction to it, but I think this is coming. I think it's coming soon. I think Kentucky is going to get the next official member of the class of 2025. Where it gets interesting, what I just want to do, spend a few minutes talking about the total wild card, the total X factor, the fascinating player in this class of 2025, and that's Caleb Wilson, okay? So Caleb Wilson, we've talked about a ton. 6'9", athletic. I like his game. Because what I like about his game, he's kind of new age. He can kind of do a little bit of everything, can play, can kind of create. He's good around the rim. And I've said it a million times, but he played AAU basketball with the Boozer twins. And why that's important is because he proved that he can be a versatile piece alongside other good players, right? We all know there are certain players that can't play with other good players, or they need the ball in their hands, or they need everything to run through them. That's not who Caleb Wilson is. Now, at times, and over the summer playing with the Boozer twins, there were times where he took over games, where he put up 22, 25, whatever, double doubles. But there was times when Cam Boozer was the best player on the floor, and he was totally comfortable playing off, a role, helping on defense, this and that, whatever. But he is a 5-star player. And I would argue one of the more interesting recruitments remaining in the high school class of 2025. And not only an interesting recruitment going forward, it's just been an interesting recruitment from the beginning. This is a kid like, listen, man, these, he's taking advantage of the visit possibilities, because you look at all the visits that he's done over the last probably 8 to 10 weeks. He's been a busy man. Let's see. He visited UCF, that's Central Florida, down in Orlando. He visited Georgia Tech down in Atlanta. He visited Kentucky. Was reportedly a very good visit. If you remember, it was right after that visit that all these guys, Jasper Johnson, Malachi Moreno, Acaden Lewis, they were jumping in the Twitter mentions and the Instagram mentions and whatever. And so he did visit Kentucky. By the way, he visited Carolina on an official visit. He visited Carolina on an unofficial visit. And what's worth noting, what's interesting about Caleb Wilson, why we're talking about him today, he's visiting Arkansas this weekend. And so I will just be fascinated to see where things go. By the way, I think Caleb Wilson visited Alabama. I can't remember. Don't kill me. I'm sorry. He's taking a lot of visits this fall. But what's going to be fascinating is just to see what kind of the buzz about this recruitment is coming out of the Arkansas visit this weekend. Bottom line, I do kind of feel like his recruitment is probably down to 3. Arkansas is certainly an interesting team. Arkansas is obviously coached by John Calipari. They've been recruiting Caleb Wilson long before John Calipari left Kentucky, was at Kentucky long before he was at Arkansas. So there's that long-standing relationship. Cal, once he gets him on campus, he could close with the best of them, as we all know. And so it's a big weekend in Arkansas, top 25 matchup. Ole Miss is in town. The stadium's going to be rocking. And I'm just curious to see, what is the buzz on this recruitment coming out of this weekend? Because again, we know there's a long-standing relationship. We know, by the way, that Arkansas's NIL, if it does come down solely to NIL, Arkansas is not getting outbid by anybody. And then if he doesn't commit, what does that mean for everybody else? And by the way, I don't think he's going to commit, but you get the point. I think it's an Arkansas, UNC, Kentucky thing. UNC, for whatever reason, doesn't seem like they're in the best position. And it's crazy because they've missed on a lot of kids this fall. By the way, every time I talk about a recruit, UNC fans are in my mentions like, you hate UNC. It's like, dude, it's not my fault Hubert Davis is missing on everybody. What do you want from me? I'm just reporting the facts, okay? And so I'll be curious to see what happens. But then from the Kentucky perspective, I know that they feel good about him right now. This is Caleb Wilson I'm talking about. Visit to campus. He's familiar with the kids in this recruiting class. I saw an interview actually with Acaden Lewis where he basically said like, yeah, Pope has told me like they want to take 4 and be done with the 2025 recruiting class. And I think that, what he said is that there's basically going to be probably about 4 kids returning next year from this year's roster at Kentucky. Brandon Garrison, Colin Chandler, Trent Noah, Travis Perry. If I'm missing 1 or 2 guys, forgive me. But there's going to be 4 or 5 returnees. They're going to take 4 or 5 high school kids, and then they're going to hit the portal for 2 or 3 guys as well. And so Pope clearly has a plan, and it appears as though Caleb Wilson is part of that plan. Also worth noting, Acaden Lewis kind of said in this video or whatever, he said, they said, who else are you recruiting? And he said, Caleb Wilson is my number 1 priority if, in fact, I do end up at Kentucky, which, wink, wink, I think we all think is going to happen. Bad wink, by the way, neither here nor there. So we'll see what happens, but I am so fascinated to see how this recruitment plays out, and specifically the next 2 or 3 weeks. Because, again, he's going to Arkansas this weekend. I think we're going to get some clarity. Where is Arkansas in this recruitment coming out of this weekend? And maybe it'll be really good, and maybe it won't be really good. But I think the best thing you can do, as always, stay tuned to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. We do these recruiting updates as often as we can because I know that you guys love them. But I would feel pretty good if I was a Kentucky fan right now about the possibility of landing your dream class. Jasper Johnson is in the bank. Malachi Moreno is in the bank. The big question is, Acaden Lewis, we assume he's next. What happens with, we assume Acaden Lewis is next. What happens with Caleb Wilson? By the way, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We will do some reaction post Acaden Lewis commitment on Saturday. Oh, by the way, you want to do your boy Torres a favor? Get your Hope in Pope t-shirt, baby. That is right, Hope in Pope. You can get it at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. We will be back Saturday talking Acaden